Bennett is a strong character both in-game and in lore. He's also one of the game's most mysterious characters. One of the biggest mysteries about Bennett is where he originates from. Today, I'll be talking about Bennett, who might have saved him, and where he may be born from. Bennett is an adventurer who currently resides in Mondstadt. He is most known for his status of being the only recurring member of Benny's adventure team. This is due to Bennett's notoriety for having bad luck. Like, literally, this guy has the worst luck in the entire planet. Even his constellation Rota Calamitas, which translates directly to the Wheel of Misfortune. And from what we know about constellations in Genshin, according to Mona, it is safe to assume that Bennett is indeed fated with misfortune and disaster. And being destined with such bad luck makes his life incredibly hard, especially with his relationships to other people, such that people will always avoid his team because of how bad his luck is. Now, Bennett isn't any ordinary child, nor is he from Mondstadt, since it's never explicitly stated where he is from. The closest we get to knowing his background is in Character Chapter Story 2. Here it mentions that he was found by an old adventurer who had gone on a journey through a land of flames, thunder, and roaring winds. At the end of said journey, there lay a wild baby Bennett. Now here I'm assuming that the land the adventurer traveled through is the same land, or at least the general area, that he found Bennett, as he continues to describe the land as, quote, this hell on earth. Upon finding the baby, the adventurer believed that it was a, quote, child abandoned by the world itself, which of course aligns with Bennett's constellation. The adventurer thought nothing of it, simply taking the baby, claiming it as his treasure, and stating, quote, this child is what I was meant to find on this journey. Unfortunately, when we move on to Bennett's Character Story 3, the adventurer ended up dying before he could tell this tale. All he mentions on his deathbed are will, adventure, and final treasure. Now these words could be interpreted differently, but so far the best way I could make them make sense is that Bennett is his final, quote, treasure from his adventure, and that his journey was something that opposed the will of the world itself, meaning that he basically did something that most people would see as impossible to do. Afterwards, Bennett was raised by old adventurers from the Adventurers Guild, and he referred to all of them as Dad, since he didn't really have a defined parental figure. Outside of adventuring, Bennett mainly spends his time taking care of them. Despite being destined with misfortune, he still tries bringing luck to those he cares for, and that's all one, such as himself, who does not fear death, could do at the very least. One question to be asked is, who exactly is this old adventurer who saved Bennett from that dangerous land? Now at first, I thought it was a sage from the Lava Walker set, but I soon came to the realization that there are a lot of contradictions that make this claim not that credible. It mainly has to do with the description of the miHoYo, which from the loading screen tips is described as, quote, an endless plain of ash where the wind does not blow. This description is supported by Hans, quote, Stanley, it's the fake Stanley here, when telling the story of his and Stanley's adventure there. He also adds that it is a, quote, barren domain where nothing grows, and, quote, nothing but silence that will make your ears ring. However, in the set's flower description, it states there existed a fiery red flower that bloomed in the burning flames. Along with this, there's even more contradictions between the two descriptions, such as in the circlet. The story in this piece depicts the miHoYo as a land full of flames, or as the people called the, quote, the flaming sea. This depiction is also shared in the Wanderer's Troop Goblet, describing it as the, quote, the blazing miHoYo in its English translation. However, the troop's goblet description varies based on the language, so we'll just veto that part out for now. Alongside these descriptions, the adventurer's description from Bennett's Character Story 2 specifically states the feeling of the scorching flame, as well as thunder and howling winds, completely contradicting Stanley's description of the land. We can conclude many things from this, but for now, let's just simply state that the miHoYo's geography shifts or has shifted over a period of time. In terms of timeline, however, there is no way to confidently confirm or deny that what happened in the Wanderer's Troop, which I would assume is about 1,000 years ago, was within the same time frame as the Lava Walker's story. Thus, there's still, like, a sliver, like a really small chance that it might have been the Lava Walker. Now, who else could be another suspect in this case? Another possible figure is the original Stanley, but it can't be him at all, for many reasons. The main reason is due to the time of events not adding up at all. Bennett is currently a teenager, assumedly around give or take 16 to 18 years old. It was only several years ago when Stanley and Hans went on their adventure to the miHoYo, where Stanley of course dies at. Thus, both him and Hans are automatically out of the picture for being quote, old adventurer. As far as I have researched, there's currently no other NPCs who explicitly mention or other details from sources regarding Marjavari. However, the place that Bennett was found in is still likely to be Marjavari because of the adventurer's description of the area that he was at. Not only this description, but Bennett himself is aware of this very place. Why he's aware of it, we have no idea. It was only shown in the Realm of Fog and Wind quest during the Windbloom event when Venti read his love poem out loud. Now, originally, my guess for this was going to be that the old adventurers who raised Bennett told him the story of how he was found, but then I remember the detail regarding his savior's death. It states that he wasn't able to tell his tale prior to his death, meaning that no one really knows Bennett's place of origin or at the very least where he was rescued from. So the reasoning for why Bennett knows this place, I have no idea. We can just assume that either he overheard it from someone or like he was just taught about this place at like some point in time. Also, there's another slight contradiction with this assumption. Again, the Sea of Ashes is described as a place of never-ending ashes where the wind does not blow. But the adventurer vividly describes hearing thunder and the wind howling. Now because of this, there's only really a few other ways this assumption could even really be possible. From the information given by the Lava Walker's plume piece, we can assume that the Phoenix deity was worshipped by the people who live near that area. If assuming that such a deity still exists to this day, it could mean that the scorching flames is the flame's heat, thunder being the bird's roar or cries, and the roaring wind being the sound of its flapping wings. Phoenixes, like most birds, tend to migrate, which could possibly explain why the geography of the land differs across different stories and timelines. Now, outside of migration, another possibility is that the phoenix's existence itself is what generates the land's flames, and the downtime between its reincarnation is when it becomes the Land of Ashes. Now, for those who don't know, in Greek mythology, phoenixes are known to go through cyclical rebirths by, quote, rising from the ashes of its predecessor. They are mostly known to die by flame, while some versions simply just depict it dying and then being reborn. The phoenix worshipped by the civilization near Marjavari may just be a continuation of said theme. Now the other idea is that Bennett was actually within a domain which exists in Marjavari, which just so happens to have the described environments mentioned by the adventurer. Now, I personally think this is more plausible in coexistence with some of the previous theories I've stated just now, since domains are able to have such conditions occur within them. For example, like artifacts domains. These domains often have changing weather or set conditions to them while fighting like a burning effect or like a freezing effect and so on and so forth. It would mean then Marjavari as a landscape is full of ash while the domain associated with it carries more similar conditions to how the adventurer describes it. This would also make more sense because the adventurer mentions that he found no artifacts, jewelry, or gold specifically, which are things usually gained as a reward from domains. What this may imply, shockingly, is mainly two things. One, Bennett might have been sacrificed by his parents or whoever had him at the time. His constellations may have been discovered or observations were done that made them realize he must die so as to not carry on with such an unlucky life. And then there's the second option, which I don't know how I came up with this or why. I honestly just kind of came up with it because there is a slight possibility of something like this able to happen for reasons. And that other thing is that he may have no human parents and was born in another fashion. Now, I know it's weird. This could branch out to like a lot of different sectors, like for example, being born from a specific god or a family, or possibly being a product of like, say, the Minsel trees, which is kind of possible, but like you'd have to really go really far stretching to really prove that. And there's just too much that could be done with that information, so I'm just going to leave that open-ended, and we can discuss that in like the comments or explore that idea somewhere else. But right here, right now, it's just not a great place to explore that. And lastly, another possible piece that may support this theory, as well as showing he may be from Netland in general, is his resemblance to Ansan. Now, Ansan is a character we see in the Tevat chapter storyline video. Now, based on her animation, she comes off as someone with a very brute personality and immediately gives me the impression of a person with immense strength. Bennett also carries this trait similarly, as he has a very, and I mean very, high pain tolerance as well as very high physical strength. They both have gray hair, with Bennett's hair being of course a more ash gray, light green eyes with very similar shape, a white patch in the exact same spot of the same exact area of the nose, and the same eyebrows. Now, of course, this is a very shallow point analysis-wise, but the resemblance it's so difficult to ignore that it makes me want to believe that they may be related in some way. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any Nowlin NPCs or people who have been there to really confirm or deny such a thing, nor do we have any information to support such a case in the first place. So, truthfully, this point is purely speculation based off of personal observations. Hi everyone, so this is post-editing Ant here. So I had a lot of new thoughts while I was editing this video and rereading some of the information, and I don't really feel like waiting for a future video to get this off my chest, so let's just go. So something I want to throw in here is that Bennett mentions thinking about death before in his character story 5, and at first he fears it, but soon begins to realize that death isn't something to be really fearful of. And this concept of life and death and how Bennett constantly crosses the line between the two makes me wonder if he was actually meant to die the day that he got rescued. And I know I already talked about the possibility of him being sacrificed and all of that, but I'm talking like, what if he was unironically like supposed to die and never be found that day? I mean, the guy is literally fated with misfortune and disaster, yet somehow manages to live on due to his high pain tolerance and physical strength, along with having others be there for him, of course, now. And he was even supposed to die like a second time in his life, but woke up receiving a vision from the gods. Like, fated with misfortune, the way his luck is so unfavorable, yet he manages to rise up again and again is so similar to how phoenixes continue to reincarnate and rise from the ashes of its predecessor. It's just so mind-boggling to me, honestly. Oh, and speaking of his vision, I've also come to another thought about the old adventurer's last words, which possibly might be related to how Bennett got his vision. Hear me out. So, as a reminder, his last words were, quote, "will, adventure, and final treasure." Now, originally I had the thought process of it being about the old adventurer's journey, but then when I rethought about it and put it all together in a sentence, I started to realize it almost kind of sounds like a prophecy in a way. Like, did this guy seriously prophesize that Bennett would go on, become an adventurer, go on an adventure that would nearly cost his life, and then wake up with a, quote, final treasure or reward, and with that reward being his vision, which helps keeps him alive? I just feel like I cracked a code or something. I don't know. Jokes aside, I can also add that it's kind of ironic that Bennett's name translated from Latin, as far as I've looked at and tried to translate it myself personally, is like similar to the word blessed, and yet he has the wheel of disaster and misfortune constellation. I don't know. There's so many. Honestly, everything about Bennett, literally everything about Bennett and what I've talked about in this video, it can be just summed up into one word, and that word is contradiction. There is so much contradiction with just Bennett. I don't understand, but maybe we're not meant to understand until Natlan comes out, so maybe we'll find out then, but until then, yeah. Alright, and that is the end of this video. If you did enjoy, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about this theory and what your thoughts might be about where he came from, who his parents might be, or if he even has any parents, or anything like that. Leave them down in the comments below. And the next video is going to be about a character related to Sumeru in some way. Obviously this person is not fully confirmed or denied, because honestly everything about Sumeru right now is not fully confirmed or denied, but it is someone who has a very high likelihood of showing up in Sumeru, so that is what the next video is going to be about. And until the next video, bye bye.